So just some quick thoughts on the movie Ghostbusters Afterlife, which I caught the other day on Prime. Yes, normally I watch older movies, but from time to time I watch something new. And you know what? I'm going to forego a full analysis of the story and the plot and the actors, like I would normally do in some of my older film reviews, because the main thing, I don't want to risk dropping any spoilers. Instead, I'll just point out a few highlights and what worked and didn't work for me. First, full disclosure, I'm nearly 50. I grew up with both the original two Ghostbusters films, and I also even used to watch the real Ghostbusters cartoon back in the 80s. So, my background, I love the formula of the Ghostbusters, this film that blended horror, comedy, sci-fi, and it was unlike anything I had ever seen before at the time. And I really like the fact that it had these legendary comedians from Saturday Night Live and SCTV. There was just so much going for it, and I always loved the Ghostbusters. So that being said, and also hearing that director Jason Reitman was involved in this, the son of legendary Ivan Reitman, I was kind of curious to check this out. It's been nearly 40 years. And yes, I know there was the reboot in 2016, but I never really checked that one out. I was curious to see this one and to see the continuity and how they were going to build on the legacy characters. And to be honest, there were some things I enjoyed about the film. It's beautifully shot. I loved all of the country settings, and while I was maybe initially against that idea of filming out in more of a small town setting versus New York City, I think this still managed to work for the story. And yes, I think the film did do a good job of bridging the original older films with this new set of characters and this new story. The highlight of the film was the brief return of the legacy Ghostbuster characters. And it's a shame, watching the end credits later, it says a special appearance by or something like that. They're not in the film as much as I would have liked. And honestly, though, I would have loved to have seen more of them in this film. The film really picked up for me when Dan Aykroyd shows up as the original Ghostbuster Ray Stantz, answering the phone. Now, the first portion of the film was fine. It kind of sets everything up, why this family's moving to the country, into this old house and so on. But it felt like it really took a long time to find its direction, and I couldn't help but feel that there were two stories going on simultaneously that maybe needed a little bit more time to develop. In one regard, it's this teenage coming-of-age yarn with the small-town romance and so on. And then on the other hand, you have this discovery of the mystery of this old house and who was Egon Spengler and so on. Why was he all alone in this creepy old house? Without getting too deep into the story, I didn't completely follow why Egon felt the need and the urgency to work alone and not work with his team. But watch for yourself and you can see. I'm not going to go much more into the details there. One thing baffled me completely, though, and I do have to address this, is how could no one remember a gigantic marshmallow man walking down the streets of New York City in the 1980s? There's this scene in the film. Paul Rudd's character, probably around my age, clearly could remember this event, but none of these younger kids had ever heard of this before. Seriously, if an event like this monumental, supernatural occurrence had taken place a mere 40 years ago, you'd think they'd be teaching things about this in a history class, or maybe have a museum even dedicated to it, to the Ghostbusters. They could have written out, I don't know, some sort of an explanation as to why maybe memories were wiped, the crossing of the streams messed with the fabric of reality or something, but I don't know. There was no clear reason given. Why would everybody have forgotten about this? Washington crossing the Delaware, signing the Declaration of Independence, giant marshmallow man in New York City. But, all right, whatever. The film was fairly tame, too. I guess you could call it family-friendly. There were some jump scares and a few raunchy references, but otherwise it was fairly tame for PG-13. And I would say this, though, is while I thought the film was fine, in thinking about it, I don't think I would watch this again. Most all of the memorable scenes, namely the legacy characters showing up near the end of the film, honestly, you can find most of these clips of them on YouTube. And note, if you look them up, you're going to get spoilers. So, obviously. But, you know, there really wasn't enough to compel me to want to buy this to watch again, or I don't know. It was a good film. I enjoyed it. But I remember finishing it and thinking, okay, that was all right. I don't think I'm ever going to watch this film again. There's part of me is thinking this would have been a great series. I'm not a big fan of streaming media services, but maybe they could have broken this down into, say, like a Netflix series of, like, you know, 6 or 8 episodes or something to really tell a more of a compelling story, maybe more in a serial format. Maybe that would have worked better for me. I don't know. I only really had one major gripe, if anything. And you know, when I do my reviews, I always keep them positive. But this one kind of bothered me. And this was how the film made very heavy usage of Elmer Bernstein's score from the original film. But yet, watch the credits, I didn't see his name once. Maybe I missed it. But watching the end credits, it said the music was by Rob Simonson. I mean, really? I mean, from the very opening of this film, it was Elmer Bernstein's theremin music from the first film. Throughout the film, I'm familiar enough with the soundtrack. I've listened to it isolated many times. I kept hearing track after track after track written by Elmer Bernstein for the 1980s Ghostbuster film. And I mean, it gave a sense of continuity, sure, but I really think Elmer Bernstein needed more credit. I mean, it bothered me because, again, it was more than just one leitmotif here and there. Instead, there are extensive passages of music taken straight from the first film, and they really should have given him some credit. When they made the movie Jurassic World, and they had some other composer came in to write the music, in the end credits, I remember seeing that they at least gave John Williams credit for his theme. And I think they should have done that here as well. Somewhere in the credits it should have said, Ghostbusters theme written by Elmer Bernstein. But in any case, that's some thoughts about Ghostbusters Afterlife. If you're a fan of the original Ghostbusters, it's probably worth checking out. It's a decent film. Rewatchability, not so sure, but it was enjoyable. So if you get a chance, check it out.